Okay, I believe we are live. Welcome, Amish. Welcome, Bhavna ji. So wonderful to have both of you. And I ended up reading. I started the book saying, okay, I always have a stack of books to read. So I was thinking, okay, I'll take a few days and I'll read it. But once I started reading it, I was just standing in my kitchen and I just was reading and reading and reading, and finishing it, in like a two and a half hours, because it's not a very big book, but it's very delightful. So what got you to write this? Because it's so different from what you've been doing, Amish and Bhavna. How did you jump into it? Tell the backstory here.
I think Didi should tell this backstory. Bhavna di, आप बताइए. So yeah, she's the driver of it.
So, Sankrant ji, really, we are a typical Indian family. बातों नहीं है, मिलते हैं और जोर जोर से बातें करते हैं. Our conversations, though, in our family, they begin at philosophy and they end at philosophy. We are extremely fond of philosophy.
Right,
As
right.
you know, Amish's books also, have at the back end there is philosophy in his book series. This project really started around 2013-14, and during dinner conversation, actually we were talking about philosophies from his book. His Beluha and Nagas and Vayuputras were out already; they had been released. Or we were talking about the philosophies from his book. We started talking about Murti Pujan. And at which stage actually our brother Amish suggested, why don't the two of you write front end philosophy and keeping books and his stories as back end, so flip his the way he presents his books. So a very interesting idea, and I began the project. I wrote around 20 pages. And I sent them to my, little brother. He's 8 years younger than me.
That's like my family also. My sister and brother are 7 and 8 years older than me. So I'm the baby also.
आप आपके घर के अमीश हैं. And so, he's my brother. He's also my bacha, And so very respectfully, very correctly, but very forthrightly, he said that, Didi, बहुत सिद्धांतिक है. It's very theoretical. And, it is not very readable. It's very academic. And so I said, all right, what should I do? I gave those 20 pages to him, Sankrantji. And he did his Amish magic, because he's the one who created these lovely characters, and I love these characters.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he created these, and this lovely, point of Guru Shishya, nest created between Raj and Nachiket, which is interestingly father-in-law and son-in-law.
Right,
it is not father and son.
Yes,
and,
yes, yes.
I thought that was so beautiful, and ably assisted by their, feisty wives, he created this family. And suddenly, really, my 20 pages had come to life, because there was point, there was counterpoint, there were arguments, agreements, disagreements. मजेदार बन गया था. To and fro chala, lekin then for some personal reasons it was shelved. As an opportunity. And we were really able to put the finishing touches, update it, and most importantly, get the wonderful editing work done by our editor Kartika. And there it is. Ho gayi kitab.
No, wonderful. I'm definitely going to hold this book up.
No such thing as too much marketing.
The book we are talking about is this book Dharma, by Amish and Bhavna ji, and it's just extraordinary, wonderful. For people who have been intrigued by the stories and played around with them and know a little bit and are ignorant of some others. This is like all of our story, right? Because ये भाव सागर इतना बड़ा है, ये कथा सागर इतना बड़ा है कि इसका अंत नहीं है कोई.
The sorry.
Go ahead.
I think shayad one of the things that's happened, and we've suffered invasions, but where the European invasion really hurt us, because it wasn't just physical destruction. A culture can always rebuild, but mental and emotional destruction takes a lot of time. And what has happened is our education system is such that we learn very little of our own culture. And why is that important? Because in our way of life, it is not a list of simplistic do's and don'ts. Uh, our way of life doesn't expect us to be a child who will do what the what God in terms of the father figure orders them to do. That's not our perspective. Our perspective is you have to be an adult and you have to think through your own decisions and then live with the consequences, positive or negative. So if that is the way you have to live, then a very critical part of your preparation for life, your education for life, is to figure out how do I make these decisions.
Yes.
If there is no one to blame, in our way, in the dharmic way, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, in the dharmic way, our the consequences of our actions are not decided by some divine figure. It is the law of cause and effect, and it's our actions which
Yes.
define. So therefore, this becomes a critical skill. What our ancestors used to say, viveka, the ability to distinguish, the ability to have wisdom. कि क्या situation में क्या करना चाहिए. This was something that we used to learn from our epics and our stories. That those were the entry level, first standard, Ramayana, Mahabharata. Then deeper we go into Puranas. Then there are so many Aranyaka, etc. And the Vedas and Upanishads are at the graduation, post graduation level.
Yes.
But even at that first standard level, Ramayana, Mahabharata, which was a standard part of our education system in ancient times, and they weren't just stories. We used to learn the art of knowing how to live from those stories. That is a very, very critical component which has been lost in the last few centuries, which is why you will find like one of the bizarre things of today. In material terms, humanity has never had it better. In actual data, I know many people think this is the worst time for humanity. Actually, there's this book called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. You should read that. In actual practical material terms, humanity has never had it better. Per capita violence is the lowest ever. Per capita poverty is the lowest ever. Per capita material comforts is the highest ever. And yet people are unhappy. It is almost bizarre. It's like भगवान से हम सब मांग रहे हैं, भगवान ने सब दे दिया है, हम फिर भी नाखुश हैं. Then there's something broken inside. It has nothing to do with external. And that art of knowing how to live used to come from our ancestors through these stories. That art has been forgotten. And that is very, very critical to revive. And it is not we keep blaming the youth. It's not their fault. The system doesn't teach them anything.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I find in the youth there is a immense curiosity and there's a hunger. And in fact, all of the churning that's going on is even encouraging more and more to be open and people. It's so funny because I teach this workshop called the Art of Living. With Sri Ravi Shankar, the something called the Happiness Program, and I took my parents to the Happiness Program, and I feel the next generation is even doing more. It's like there's so many stories. Like my niece learned, and then my niece took her parents, my sister, and my jijaji. So it's almost like the next generation and the next generation is actually waking up what was lost, and so definitely. That part is true, and I think in some sense nothing more delightful. You were talking about the question. Nothing more delightful than Nachiketa starting this off. And Nachiketa is a brat of a boy in a way, right? He's the one who's not going to let go of the question, And Kathopanishad, of course, is one of my favorite.
Exactly. Inspired from Katha Upanishad.
Yes, yes.
When even his father is sick of him.
Yeah, I know. I know. To Yama, I give you. Because he's insistent. He's not going to stop. So he's that we talk about, oh, the younger generation doesn't listen and all of this kind of stuff, but I mean, this is the case right from Katha where Nachiketa is not going to listen. He's not going to take BS. If you're going to.
There is nothing wrong with questioning. In fact,
Yes.
that is our way. The problem that happens if questioning does not come from a genuine desire to learn, if questioning comes from a place where you actually want to deride and attack, which often happens, sadly,
Yes,
in
yes,
today's day,
yes.
and public debate has become that way, where you're not asking a question to the other guy to genuinely learn for yourself.
Right.
Because if that is the perspective, you will be insistent in your questioning, but you'll always be very polite, very humble. The value of good manners, our ancestors used to teach us. The value of, you notice the way when in the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, when any individual would meet someone who's elder, there would always be shishtachar. There would
Yes.
always be manners. That doesn't mean that you will do what they tell you to do. No, you will do what you think is swadharma.
No, even if you're about to fight them and kill them, there's going to be Shishtachar.
There should be shishtachar. The value
Right.
of good manners.
Right.
The thing is, if you ask questions from that perspective, you yourself will benefit because the other person will open their heart for you and actually share their knowledge. It's like there's this lovely, Didi and I, we are from our father's family is from UP, from Kashi.
Yeah.
One of the folk stories in UP Bihar is that at the end of the battle of Lanka, when Ravan lay dying on the battlefield, Prabhu Sri Ram told Prabhu Lakshman that Ravan may have been our opponent, but there is no denying that he is extremely knowledgeable. He had the blessings of Goddess Saraswati. He is a devotee of Lord Shiva. Therefore, go and learn from him.
Absolutely.
And since you are going to learn from him, you will show respect to him. Now, think of the attitude that Lord Ram is showing, and this to a man who had kidnapped his wife, and even
Right.
then he did the right thing in battling him. But even then, at the end, shishtachar and respect for knowledge.
And
Therefore,
Maryada, that's Maryada Purushottam.
that is Maryada. That is
Yeah.
Maryada. Maryada doesn't mean you become a doormat.
Right.
Doesn't mean you allow others to walk all over you. Maryada means having manners, shishtachar, knowing how to behave.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that I'm going to want you to talk about all these four characters because when I started opening it and I started reading the book, I was like, oh, what is this? Like, how is there is Dharmraj, there is Nachiketa. I know the classic dialogue of Dharmraj and Nachiketa, but this is a completely different setting, and then there's Lopamudra and there's Gargi. So tell us the backstory of these characters and how those particular ones came also.
We're not gonna. Sorry, Didi, you should answer this. If I can just say one thing, we don't want to reveal too much of the characters right now because this is a series.
Yes.
So
Oh,
the next
wonderful.
one with Lord Shiva's blessings will actually be on the beauty of Murti Puja. Why
Ah,
ice worshipping is so important and why it intrinsically, almost intuitively engenders liberalism inside you. Right?
yes, yes,
So, but through those, you will actually discover more and more of these characters. But
yes,
Didi, if
yes,
you want
yes.
to say something.
I will say one thing, but Sankrantji, that you startled me when you called Nachiket Pratish because as we were discussing earlier
He's my
that
favorite brat, by the way. So I don't mean that.
because I'll reveal this to you. I'll reveal this to you now because, as we were discussing earlier, the dharmic path is for adults, and from an adult lens, really, we are all complex human beings. And there is a bad boy and a bad girl in all of us. There also is a good boy and a good girl in all of us. and there are multiple boys and girls in all of us, And Amish and I are working on the second project, as he revealed right now. It is, yes, on Murti Pujan. And what will emerge is the bad boy aspect of Nachiket, which is going to be very delightful.
Wonderful, wonderful. Absolutely. Look forward to having another conversation on that. I think Murti Puja is such a ripe topic. I had written myself on it a little bit because I think it's completely not understood. So I think it will be very wonderful to have that discussion, and also it's such a human. And this is really one of the wonderful thing about the dialogue that happens in the Dharma book again, is that it's this Murti Puja is also such a human thing. We are naturally drawn to icons. We are naturally drawn to images. It's like if there's a music playing, we dance, right? It's a natural thing. So in that sense, also, we always grasp at symbols, and if you take those symbols away, in fact, my article said Murti Puja is an antidote to fundamentalism, because the more you take away those symbols, the more raucous and fundamentalist you're going to be, because you're deprived of accessible symbols.
And so, things which gives the beauty of devotion to the sacred. There's this very funny picture that I had seen. I don't know if the two of you saw that. Didi had retweeted it. I don't know if I shared that picture with you. It's such a beautiful picture. In Mumbai, after so many months, the local trains had restarted. Okay. And there was this Mumbai commuter, and for many commuters in Mumbai, the local train is their lifeline. It is their connection to their work, and therefore their means to fulfill their responsibilities to their family, to their spouses, to their children, to their parents, so that they can meet their responsibilities. There's this beautiful picture of a young, maybe 25, 30-year-old Indian guy, has got his haversack, clearly going to work. Okay, a small bag. He's at the platform. The train is out there, and he's down on his knees, and his head is touching the door. Okay, and he is giving respect to the train. Now, I retweeted that, and almost all Indians were there, so beautiful. And see, it teaches humility when you're seeing sacred even in a train, because that is getting you to your place of work, so you can meet your responsibilities.
Yes.
What does it do to you? It makes you a kinder, gentler, more humble human being, right? Whereas I saw some other silly thing saying, "Arey, what a stupid man! Why is he touching the feet of the train? Arey, he should." There are some guys saying he needs to be slapped and taught what is sacred. Seriously, you know, and the intrinsic liberalism that comes in when you see the sacred everywhere. And what it does, see, because one of the challenges in having a culture which encourages questioning, that if you question everything and destroy all that is sacred, like what has happened in Western countries, you have an atomized society. Nothing is sacred. So,
Yes.
so therefore, I mean, nothing holds the society together.
Yeah, coming from Seattle, I can really resonate with that also.
Their nation isn't sacred. If taken to its extreme, it will become the nation is not sacred.
It's going to destroy it. It's going to destroy itself.
It leads to the kind of chaos we are seeing. But if you remove questioning completely, go to the other extreme, then you have a society of just compliant goats.
It's
How do you
dark
find
ages. It's the dark ages. Yeah.
how do you find that balance where you can encourage questioning as well, but you find sacred things which tie us all together? I think that is the to me, that picture was not just a silly man touching the feet of the train. It was the beauty of the spirituality of that man,
And of Indian culture.
and of Indian culture, of seeing that this train gets me to my work, which means I can meet my responsibilities. I can feed my child. I can take care of my parents. I can take care of my wife. So therefore, this train is sacred.
And the same thing happens in Shastra Puja, where we have puja for our tools. So the problem is when you put this lens on, worship is reserved for the creator, and you have this very very narrow view, then you say, अरे कितना stupid लोग हैं ये अपने पेशकश की पूजा कर रहे हैं. लेकिन so but when you shift that perspective a little bit, we say puja for us is very different. We are saying puja means something which is worthy of respect, right? So puja is that, and also I see puja as relationship. It's really recognizing that relationship.
Spot on.
Yeah.
It's
And,
about
absolutely. So this is, and coming back to the Dharma book, that's I really liked how you situate the characters in relationship. There is a relationship going on. There is, of course, there's two couples, and there is a dialogue between the couples. There is a little family things going on between the couples, which are which is in any typical family. But coming back to I don't know if you're going to tell us who Lopamudra is or who Gargi is. A lot of people won't even know what these characters. This is the loss of our education, Amishi, that you were talking about. In fact, my mother was saying she grew up in Patiala, and she was saying even during British times, during school, we actually learned a little bit of the Vedas, we learned a little bit of the Mahabharata, we learned this was part of our schooling during British times. And after we became, quote, independent, the secularization of society meant we actually took our entire culture and we shoved it out of the curriculum. So in that sense, your books, your book and your books are really wonderful. I think the reception they get is also because there's this deep hunger for us to go back to our stories. So tell us, are we going to learn a story? Who's Lopamudra? Bhavna ji, you tell us.
Let the viewers do their homework.
Yeah, go and do some digging. Do some Google work.
The characters
Yeah,
Find out who Gargi is. Find out who
this is the homework for the viewers. Whoever does the first tweet tagging the Garud Prakashan handle, explaining who Lopamudra and Gargi are, will get a complimentary copy of Amish's book from us. Okay, so Lopamudra and Gargi.
Sankrantji, I'm sorry for interrupting, but the questionnaire should not be about Nachiketa and Dharmaraj and Lopamudra and Gargi in Amish and Bhavna's book. It should be, who are they?
Yes. Yes, that is my question. Who are they? Who are they in our stories? And then after you discover who are they, then you see how they play out in Amish and Bhavna's book.
Yes.
Because otherwise, that's why I said it was so delightful to read the book, because of all these layers that are going on, and it's like the classic Nachiketa Dharmaraj Samvad, but it's been taken in a completely different context, and all that is going on. So that's fun. And so one of the other things is that we are really making some targets. I wouldn't say targets, but we're really taking these icons like Bhishma, and I think we're going to have an interesting conversation about Bhishma, and really questioning, his role and the respect that he's accorded. And one of the things that I really find wonderful about, this is what you were saying earlier about the story, that the story in some way is it. We are not looking for perfection. We are looking for the imperfection in a way, because it's when there is a debate. It's when we are saying कि राम ने ठीक किया या गलत किया. अरे सीता को वनवास हुआ, ये ठीक हुआ या गलत हुआ. जब ये प्रश्न पूछ रहे हैं, उस प्रश्न में हमारा विवेक उठेगा, जागेगा. So this was a very wonderful thing, Amish, you said in the beginning also, that the entire purpose of the tradition in some ways is to sharpen this drishti, is to sharpen the diamond of Viveka, so that we can use the discernment in our everyday life, right? So it's really training. All of these it's like training stories. जैसे बच्चे को पहले चलने के लिए ट्रेनर वो देते हैं, वॉकर देते हैं, फिर और जाता है, तो ये ट्रेनिंग हो रही है.
Spot on,
तो
spot on.
We were talking about tools,
Hmm.
earlier as means of growth and learning. In that sense, maybe, at a deeper level, the characters in the stories are also tools to make us go deeper and, touch Viveka.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then there are so many layers of meaning. I know Paramahansa Yogananda had done this discourse on the Gita and the Mahabharata, where each of the characters is mapped to a particular attribute in the human psyche, for instance, and and of course all of the Kauravas, they represent certain negative tendencies, and all of that those aspects also come out. So all of these stories, I think they have these multiple layers of meaning, which is why they're we're still talking about these stories of thousands of years ago. They're still relevant to our life, like what I am doing tomorrow. In a way. So coming back to Bhishma, I really enjoyed this whole uh, dialogue that's happening on Bhishma. So on one sense, he's like the most self effacing, I mean, self-giving guy. He sacrificed everything. But if you flip that around, he's utterly selfish, right?
Didi, do you want to take this or Amadi?
The thing is that motives and intentions, the word we use in the book, bona fides, are very difficult to uncover by our conscious awareness. It's so difficult to decode. It's most difficult to decode ourselves. You are right. Bhishma Pitama is an icon, and what a sacrificing life. But when you go deeper and you question the intentions, really only Bhishma Pitama knew what his intentions really were. But what we can do is we can counterintuitively ask ourselves, had that sacrifice not been made? What would the parinam of that have been? And from that angle, it is safe to say that if Bhishma Pitama had chosen not to make that sacrifice, certainly he would have made a very good king. He would have made a better king than both Dhritarashtra as well as Pandu. He would have made an honorable, and respect-worthy husband. He would have made a wonderful father. After all, he was a fantastic great-grand-uncle. The kingdom would certainly, Hastinapur would have been better off had he not made that sacrifice. Gandharima, what a beautiful sacrifice. As a Pativrata Nari, she's fearless. It's beautiful. Having said that, decoding motives is so difficult. Had Gandhari Namma not chosen to blindfold herself in that, resplendent sacrifice, she may have been able to, be a better guide to her blind.
A better Dharma Patni.
A better Dharma Patni. Pativrata Nari to thi. Dharma Patni.
Because if a Dharma Patni will not guide to Dharma, then there is something missing in the Dharma.
Dharma Patni ko Dharma shabd aa jata hai. She would have been, I would go so far as to say, a better mother to her children, certainly Duryodhan. When you contrast that with Kuntima, she made great sacrifices, huge sacrifices in life. Had she not chosen to make those sacrifices, is it safe to say her Pandavas would have been worse off? Would have been worse off, but for her sacrifices. It's an interesting lens through which we can observe and really not judge, but try and understand and explore our own motives. Our own motives.
And I think that's. Go ahead, Amish.
No, what she said so rightly, because in our culture, sacrifice is privileged. Sacrifice is seen as respect worthy.
Yes.
And very often it is, right?
Mm.
But we need to, in that spirit of questioning, that what are you doing the sacrifice for?
Mm.
And उस बलिदान के परिणाम क्या हो रहे हैं? What are the
Mm.
consequences of that
Mm.
sacrifice?
Mm.
Are you doing that sacrifice for the good of others? Then it's
Mm.
no. Are you
Mm.
doing that sacrifice to have people tell you, and look at me, see how great I am? You know,
Yes. Yes.
then is it really a sacrifice?
I
You
call
know,
it the Udarta syndrome also sometimes. We have this,
oh,
it's like the Prithviraj. Did Prithviraj act rightly or wrongly?
so in fact, that's one of the discussions I have in in my previous book before Dharma, King Suhail Dev,
Mm. Mm.
where King Suhail Dev has this debate with his two main lieutenants at the end,
Mm. Mm.
that should he be utterly and completely ruthless with the enemy,
Mm.
or should he behave with dharma, and because he's told you should behave with dharma with your
Mm.
enemy, you
Mm.
should treat them with honor. And his thing is that what is the dharma of a warrior?
Mm.
Is it to keep his soul intact,
Mm.
right? Even
Mm.
if the enemy comes back and
Mm.
innocent people die because of it,
Mm.
or is it to be willing to take a sin on his own soul, even if he knows he will suffer for it, to
Right.
ensure that the enemy doesn't come back, so that the
Right.
people who are behind him, who depend on him for protection, do
Right.
not die? So, what is the dharma of a warrior?
Right.
And he says this line uh, in there, that a true warrior is one who, if I remember correct, actually I wrote it. Sorry. A true warrior is one who who is willing to sacrifice his own soul for the good of his people, who loves his people more than he loves his own soul.
Yes. Yes.
That is what dharma is. So therefore, what is sacrifice? That is something
Mm.
that we can
Mm.
question.
And we have to explore the layers of it. And I think the Bhishma example is such a good example in what Bhavna ji said, which is that yeah, Bhishma made a great sacrifice. He said he's going to be a lifelong brahmachari and all of these things. But if he hadn't done that, maybe millions of people wouldn't have died in a war. You know. So what was that? Where did that path lead to? And what was he? And the other thing that I don't think anybody has really asked it in that way. But at the end, he was sacrificing for his father's lust. Right. This is what you bring up in the book when you're talking about sexuality and other things. I mean, what was this great sacrifice for?
If
So
you're that comes back to it again. What is the reason you are sacrificing for? So
right,
again, even in the Suhaildev example, why did he do something ruthless? He was sacrificing in some ways,
yes,
his own soul, but for the good of his people, not because he
right,
just wanted to be ruthless.
right,
Okay.
right.
So therefore, the reason that you sacrifice for decides whether that sacrifice is dharma or adharma.
Yes, yes, that's so amazing. And in fact, speaking of Sohail Dev, I want to actually make an announcement. We now have the entire Amish collection up
Oh,
on Garuda Books. So, including Sohail Dev, all of the books we put on Garuda Books. This is a short link to it, grpr.in/Amish, and you will find the entire Amish collection. Definitely go and also definitely support your own author and your own bookstore rather than feeding the crocodiles of a Brazilian forest always. So it's
that was very
it's
smoothly put.
so all of Amish's books are there, and I'm going to be definitely reading a lot more as we go forward, and perhaps inviting him for more conversations. So going, I mean, the characters, I think, this is the beauty of it. Each of the characters you've taken, each of the stories, they're the layers we can keep going on. I wanted to bring up, especially in context of Bhishna, but I think you go deeper into it. And it's a question. I think there is some kind of, I would say, I wouldn't call it sexual revolution, but there's definitely more sexual exploration happening in the current generation perhaps than happened in the previous ones. And I don't know how we map it to what ancient India was, but certainly the ability to talk about sex, I think, was much more easier in ancient times than it became in sort of colonial Victorian times. So I was actually glad you had a chapter on this. And let's talk about, since we are on the subject of Bhishma, um, what is, Bhishma has done this whole sacrifice, and then he kind of denies Amba. Is Amba really wrong in being upset about this? What is how do we take Amba here?
Very, very valid question. Didi, I think you should answer it, but I will come back to the Bhishma thing and eroticism later. But
Right.
on Amba, it's a very, very fair question
So,
on her.
yeah. So what I will say is, the nub of the exploration of sex is to distinguish the human from the animal. We're human beings. We were animals. A very, very long time back. We still have our reptilian brain, but we are human beings. And in essence, the difference is the animal approach and the human approach is love. And the minute you wrap sex around love, it is not only beautiful, it is the road to divine, to the divine. It's divinity itself, because love is everything. Love is the center of life. It's a central element of life. Love is what is the basis of, in some sense, dharma, love and intuition. And that's what makes us human beings. Shorn of love, sex is lust. It's the animal. And Amba, in essence, is love denied. It's the denial of love. She was denied the realization and the culmination of her love for Shalva. Right. And she was robbed of that by the Bhisham sacrifice, right, of Bhishma Pitama. Right. And that's when you strip away beauty. Right. And you take a step towards the ugly.
Right. Right.
Which is, in some sense, the essence of the story of Amba, shorn of personification.
And also the flip side of it is that if I was using modern language, in a way, she's even protesting being objectified in a way. She's like, am I just a prize to be won for your brother? Like firstly, I have no control over the matter. And secondly, it's not even this warrior is fighting for me. His brother is not even strong enough to come and can claim me, right? And but the warrior who claims me rejects me. Like, so she's kind of left with nothing at the end of the day.
You're so right, and this too we have examined in the book, because when you even you examine celibacy from the Christian lens, right, it is so convoluted. It's not complex. It is convoluted. I will use that word. In the book we have talked about even Saint Augustine and Saint Paul.
Yes. The torture they were doing on themselves, and
yes. And had Bhishma not, submitted himself to that, that arrogance of celibacy, he may have been a good husband to Amba. Amba was willing to marry Bhishma.
Right.
She said, "You marry me." Yes. And had Bhishma been able to tap into his heart and find love, the story would have been different.
Right.
It would have been love realized.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things, just to add to this also, because the approach to sex in the Western world is on two extremes. Because it begins with guilt, because of the original sin, etc. And as a reaction to that, they swing to the other extreme and it becomes obsession. Right?
It's the repression obsession syndrome. It's
then becomes obsession, and in
Yes.
both cases it is unhealthy.
Hmm.
uh, and whereas in the traditional Indian way, there is a centered approach to it. That of course it's
Hmm.
a beautiful part of life. Why should you
Yes.
deny it? But
Yes.
so there's no guilt to be associated with it. But it's not something you should be obsessed with either.
Right.
So the Purushartha concepts in
It's
terms
one
of
of the Purusharthas. It is not all of the
exactly
Purusharthas.
it's
Yeah.
not all. So
Yeah.
and so karma is not denied, right?
Yes.
But it is one of the four. You need to experience all the others as well. Only then do you lead a complete life. Now,
Yes.
if you experience all this and then choose sannyasa, then choose
Right.
monkhood,
Right.
because you've experienced it and you want to move on, then you'll be calm, you'll be at peace inside.
Yes.
How do
Yes.
you know you haven't made a healthy choice? It's because you're not peaceful inside. If you're not peaceful inside, it's not a
Absolutely.
healthy choice, right?
Absolutely.
If you've
And that's the
chosen
story of so much in the Catholic Church, like you were pointing out, like so much of the child abuse that has happened through the priesthood. And, so many stories are because it's not really something that has happened spontaneously. My guru, Sri Sri, says it very beautifully. He says, Brahmacharya is not a choice, it's a happening. So it's not like now I'm going to decide to be a brahmachari. It's like at some point that need drops away, and it's just like the ripe fruit is ripe and it falls off the tree, and there is no looking back. There is no going and obsessing over, like the Augustine thing or the other case,
like you
where
like you moved on. It's like,
yeah,
like for example, there was a time, and I'm not saying, I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm some boring bugger right now, but there was a time in my banking days, in my college days, I would drink peacefully. I was a singer in a band. It was a part of, of fun.
sure.
Now one simply doesn't feel the need for it. Like
Right,
I don't really drink that, or very rarely, right?
right, right, right,
I don't really drink, so it's not. But it's not that one is thinking about it all the time. Oh God, I'm missing a drink. I'm missing a drink.
right,
No,
right, right, right. Exactly,
just
exactly.
one doesn't just doesn't feel the need for alcohol, right?
Yeah,
If you come to that stage, then it's you remain peaceful inside and you've given up something,
right,
right?
right,
Uh, I think that is the ideal way to let something go,
right,
rather than, again, this would be that sacrifice. If you're saying, look at me, how great I am, I have given up all sexual pleasures, I am a
right.
great man, please respect me. That is
Exactly.
when you're making a choice, not because you don't feel the need for it anymore, right?
And a lot of times the ideological violence almost comes from it in the sense, what I find is that when you've given it up that way, a lot of time fanaticism actually occurs because that energy gets channeled into some
Somewhere.
other way, and there is a fanaticism that gets associated with it. So I guess we're going to talk a little bit about everybody's favorite character, which is Karna. Rashmi Rathi. So Karna is, everybody has so much sympathy for Karna. There's like hardly anybody whose heart doesn't go out to Karna and say, he was wronged, and he was such a person with heart, and all he wanted to do was to, find his place, and he was wronged by the Pandavas, and even he was wronged by the guru, everything. So how shall we understand Karna?
Didi explains this beautifully. Didi, I think you should.
Karan is everyone's favorite. My favorite too. uh, I guess, Karan is the favorite of everybody because, he resonates with, the fractured in all of us. All of
Hmm.
us have, a corner, of our heart that is fractured. Hum insan hai.
Hmm.
And that part of ourselves, resonates with Karan. Karan is the
Hmm.
partner who's on the side of the chorus.
Hmm.
So there has to be something deeper in that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes.
Uh, he belongs, this side. And interestingly, the sixth sense is intuition, you
Hmm.
know. So
Hmm.
there is meant to be a sixth sense,
Hmm.
not just five. The
Hmm.
sixth sense is,
Hmm.
but the sixth sense is caught in that, in that youth,
Hmm. Hmm.
and in that Chakravyuh,
Hmm. Hmm.
of sorts. He's fractured, but the thing is that in life we all have something to complain about. Who doesn't? Uh,
Yes.
Everyone's glass is half full, but then we all have also got something from life that we don't really deserve. uh, सबका glass आधा भरा भी है.
बिल्कुल,
Gratitude.
बिल्कुल.
And the Arjunic quality is gratitude.
Yes,
And
yes.
to move away from victimhood to gratitude is, is an act of love that we can make to ourselves. To move away. We will only be doing ourselves a favor if we are able to use our Arjunic quality that really no one's favorite.
See, but Arjun has devotion, right? Which is what takes him to the other side.
He's the one Krishna chose.
तो वही अगर कर्ण में वो आज आ गया होता भक्ति भाव कृष्ण के लिए तो कर्ण भी तर जाता.
When I think Didi said it so beautifully that all of us have resentment for some things in life and victimhood in life, and that's a very comforting place. And especially in today's day, like it's like everyone wants to find how they are a victim. All of us are victims in some way or the other. Life is not fair to anyone.
Yes.
Right? All of us have been cursed with worse than we deserve in some parts of our life. It is that way with everyone. And that victimhood is a very comforting place to be. Because then there is someone you can blame. Right? It's not my fault. I can blame someone. As Karna would say, I can blame my brothers, I can blame my mother, I can blame my guru, I can blame everyone. Right?
My destiny.
My destiny.
My fate.
Yeah. And this is a very comforting place to be in. But it's a crutch and it is not in your own long-term interests. Because if, as Didi said rightly, if all of us are victims in some way, all of us are also privileged in some way. Every single one of us, single one of us is privileged in some way. The fact that we are not born as animals and subjected to the horrific torture that happens to life forms in these mass production meat factories. I mean, the karmic crime that humanity is doing,
Yes.
out there. Can you imagine the suffering? The fact that we are not born that way means we are privileged in some way. So all of us are privileged in some way. If we can be thankful for that, we can get over our victimhood. And the only ones who actually rise and make something of themselves and lead a positive life are those who see themselves as people.
Powerful. Yeah.
Yes, not as victims.
Yes. Yes.
Not as
So this is such a wise and useful learning, Amishji, for this moment in time as well. When we're seeing all these movements, all these agitations that are happening all over the world, and a lot of it are driven by narratives of victimhood. So this is not to deny that people have been oppressed, and this is not to deny there's oppression in the world and there is problems in the world, but as an individual, if we go ahead and internalize that victimhood, then we in a way give away our own power, right? And we're constantly stuck in our own negative cycle where we are going to get drawn
and wasting so much energy.
Yes.
I'm in UK right now.
Yes.
I can either go and pick fights with every British person out here. Your ancestors did this to me. Your ancestors did that to me. And and I'm not saying don't speak the truth of what happened. Speak the truth of what happened.
Right.
But seeing ourselves as victims and attacking someone today all the time, how's that helping me?
Right. I think the notion of balance, and this is something you bring up in the book as well, right? Where is that razor's edge? Where is that point of balance? Because in some ways, dharma is about seeking that जैसे कहते हैं उसको तराजू का वो जो होता है ना, क्या कहते हैं उसको, नोक. So how be lovely to hear this. Also, there was this lion and the doe story, that you kind of leave halfway, and this is the problem. It's a very frustrating book, just as frustrating as our stories are, because whenever we're looking for the easy answer, Dharma turns it into a question.
Yeah.
Mm,
So
right?
there's a reason why the ending of that story is not given. Not just in this book, even in the original Ravan enemy of Aryavarta, because that is not
Yes.
important.
Right.
So just for those of your viewers who may not have read this book, shame on you guys if you haven't picked it up.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
so the
Let me see.
once
I
again,
can send you it. Definitely, and it's right. The order link is right under the
there you go,
page.
right?
It's a very thin book. It's actually easy. Sometimes people get scared of fat books these days, and especially with a book called Dharma, you expect it to be fat, right? So it's lovely to have a thin Dharma book and a
Correct.
thin and easy to read, delightful story Dharma book.
So the
So go
line
ahead.
is no story, essentially, just to let you know, this is from Ravan, enemy of Aryavarta. This is a story that is told to Ravan by Vedavati, and she tells him that she saw this hunt. There was across a meadow, there was a single male lion and his children and his cubs. Now, if it's a single male lion without the lionesses, it means he's grown old, and some younger lion challenged him, and he's been kicked out of his pride. Normally, what happens in the lion prides is it's a ruthless world, Matsya Nyay. The new lion actually kills the cubs of the older lion, so that only his bloodline survives. It's ruthless, but it's a law of the jungle, Matsya Nyay.
Right.
So,
Right.
but if that old single lion and his cubs are there, it means he managed to escape with his cubs, right? But he is old and therefore cannot hunt well. His children cannot hunt, so they are starving. Okay, and he sees this family across the meadow, a doe, a mother deer, and her children, right? And he knows that he may not be strong enough to kill the mother deer, but if he kills one of the cub deers, then he'll be able to feed his children, and so the hunt begins. And the lion starts charging. And the mother deer sees the lion, shouts out a warning. She starts running. Her children start running. One of the children is a runt deer, and he starts slipping back. And it's obvious that the lion is going to catch up and probably kill that runt. And the mother deer starts slowing down. And then slowly she comes to a halt, and in between the lion and the cub, essentially sacrificing herself to save her child. And the lion comes close to the doe deer, through the door, and then stops in confusion why she stopped. And then that's the question that Dharma asks: what should the lion do? Should uh, should he be a good father and kill the deer to feed his children? Because if he kills an adult female deer, there's enough food probably for a week.
Right.
For, right? Or should he be a good individual and gift life to a magnificent mother who is
Right.
willing to sacrifice her life for her children?
Right.
What does Dharma say? Uh, and the point that gets discussed in here is that often it is not the act that you do, it's the reason for which you do that act that defines whether it's Dharma or Adharma. If the lion is hunting and killing someone just because he enjoys it, that is Adharma. But if the lion is killing a deer or a cub deer to feed his children, which is his duty as a father, then that is Dharma. If the mother deer sacrifices her life and leaves her children to just survive just like that, just because she's tired of life, that is
Right.
Adharma. But if she sacrifices her life for the good of her children to save them, that is Dharma. Same actions on both sides. But whether it's Dharma or Adharma is defined by the reasons for which they did it. And then the main thing is at the end, we don't say did the lion kill the deer or not, because that's not important.
Yes. Yes.
The important is to realize the
The
reason
question is the importance. The
question.
importance is in the question, not in the answer.
Correct.
And this is one of the things that we so often miss. As I was talking earlier, when we were talking about did Rama did the right thing or did he do the wrong thing, and so many things when we're doing it, we take it like we are looking for a commandment, right? We're looking for commandments, whereas we are not a commandment based system at all.
We are not. And there is a lot of comfort in being a child.
Yes.
I'm not deriding those who want that way of life. Fair enough.
Sure.
Some people like it that someone is telling them what to do.
Right.
So if things go right, they can be grateful. If things go wrong, they can blame someone, and they'll just do what they're told to do. That's okay.
Right.
That's one way of life. Another way of life, however, is different. That is, I will be the adult and I will take charge of my life and I will make the decisions and live with the consequences. That is the Indian way. That is the dharmic way.
And in fact, what I find is that, and this is the Dharma book is such a great example of that, is that what we are doing through all this is cultivating the ability for moral reasoning. We are actually growing that faculty that allows us to do moral reasoning, because the dilemma that's going to happen tomorrow when I'm walking on the road, when I'm in my office, when I'm at home, is not a dilemma that I'm going to find directly in a book. The dilemma is going to be my dilemma in my life, my dharam sankat. My dharam sankat is going to happen with my conditions, right? But if I have learned the moral reasoning, then I can use that moral reasoning to resolve my dharam sankat.
Yes.
If I may, yeah.
And to me, that that is the delight of this of the Dharma book, is that contextualizing it in a family conversation and having it brings it to life, because these are not abstract stories that are meant for some, we say they're philosophical, but that philosophy is not meant for just speculation, right? It's meant for the decisions that we have to make in our life. Do I fire this employee? What should I do with my brother who's acting in a particular way? What should I do with the mother-in-law? And this, all of these situations is what it's informing in a way. So Bhavna ji, what some ending remarks from you? I'm going to keep it within an hour or so. What how would you ask people to read this book? Shall they read it like a story? Should we read it slowly? Shall we read it fast? Or it doesn't matter how we read it?
I will not be prescriptive.
The important thing is to read it.
Read it like a friend. Now, how, what is friendship to you is something that you have to decode for yourself. What is your attitude towards your friend? Adopt that natural attitude and read the book like a friend.
Beautiful.
That's wonderful.
Didi, you should write fiction books as well.
Absolutely.
She has such a wonderful way of putting things, I'm telling you.
I know. और सखा तो हम तो प्रभु को भी सखा की तरह ले सकते हैं ना. So, and this is another wonderful thing that I love about the tradition, is that this notion of relationship, that I can relate to Krishna as a beloved, I can relate to Krishna as a friend, I can relate. There are all these different ways of relating to the divine. There doesn't have to be only God the Father, or there doesn't have to be one template. I can even relate to Krishna as a child, let alone and feed and have that, and I'm hoping we are going to learn more about this in the book on Murti Puja coming up. But this relating and relationship, to me, I find, is also a very central aspect of our tradition. And perhaps Amish, you'll lead us to looking at relationship, because this book in a way it has relationships in it, but it's also relating to the bigger picture.
I am wondering whether you're ghostwriting, also the book that we are working on.
I know, because you're telling all the points that we're going to put in the book.
Okay, awesome. Maybe. I think we just have to thank the gurus and the tradition in this, Amish and Bhavna ji, right? It looks like we've caught on some of the caught on some of the kripa of the divine.
So yeah, but I mean, if I can end it with that, uh, there is an internal life for us human beings. There is an intellectual life. There is a spiritual life, but there is an emotional life and a relationship life as well. And I think if there's anything that this last year has taught us, is the value of relationships. You know, of what these lockdowns have taught us. It has taught most people, even those who used to think they are loners, perhaps they're realizing, no, actually, maybe they're not loners.
Right,
I used to think I'm a loner. Okay.
right.
But I mean, loner doesn't mean that you want to be only with yourself. It just means that
Yes,
your social circle will probably be smaller, but you need to have a social circle
yes,
because that is what makes us us. That's what makes human beings us. And if this can, in some ways, in many parts of the world, we have carried the attack on traditions to such an extent that society has got atomized.
yes,
Most relationships are, our traditions are collapsing, community feelings are collapsing. Most relationships have become adversarial rather than partnerships.
right.
Uh, Relationships which should
Or
be sacred.
contractual,
Yeah,
adversarial or
or
contractual.
contractual. So
Yeah.
relationships which should be sacred, parent child, spouses, they have become adversarial. You know,
Mm,
and again, I'm not saying that you swing to the other extreme where you become a doormat. No,
mm, mm.
but how do you find that balance and the value of good relationships in making you strong? I can tell you, that in our family, we passed through a difficult time in the last 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
And grief comes to everyone. It's a part of life.
Right.
But one of the things that has helped us get through this is the strength of our bonds, of our
Mm,
relationship, our siblings, of our parents. I mean, because often, it's not just about talking to someone or finding some intellectual answer or something. It's just someone giving you a hug. That's it.
yes, yes,
I know it sounds, kind of like a Bollywood movie, silly. No, but these things are also important.
yes, yes,
Uh, and we must value this. And we learn the art of relationships through these stories, once again,
yes,
through our
yes.
engagement with the divine.
Right.
Why is it that we are engaging with Lord Ram at Ram Janmabhoomi as Ram Lalla? You know,
Mm, mm.
it teaches us something. You
Yes,
know,
yes, yes.
when we look at Lord Shiva as a father at
Mm,
a particular temple, again, it is teaching us something, right?
right.
When we are looking at Parvati Ma as Annapurna, a mother who's blessing us with food, again,
Yes,
it's teaching us something about
right,
relationships,
right.
uh, and which is what keeps our relationships strong. And the strength that good relationships give you is you realize it only when you don't have it. One of the things all of us should realize, the friends and relationships, quote unquote relationships you have on social media, they are not relationships. They're not. Your Twitter, Instagram, they're not. Okay. Your actual relationships, your bonds, not more than 9, 10 people. Okay.
Mm, yes,
Max to max 15 people. The kind of people who will die for you without a second thought, who you
right,
will die for without a second
right,
thought.
right,
Those are your bonds,
right,
right?
right,
And that's what gives you strength to get
right,
through life.
right, right.
The value of those relationships should not be forgotten. I
Yes,
see,
yes.
people these days who are willing to cut their parents out of their life for political differences. I'm like, यार क्या कर रहे हो? ये कोई reason है
Yeah,
कि
yeah,
she,
yeah.
your mother voted for someone else and you voted for someone else? You will not talk to your mother. What is wrong with you? You know, those leaders who you're fighting over probably don't even know you exist. Your
Bilkul,
mother is
bilkul.
your mother. Your child is your
Yes.
child. You know, whatever your personal lives, the bonds
और
are so important.
और ये आपने मर्यादा की भी जो बात कही थी अमीश जी, वो भी इसमें आ जाती है कि disagreement or something, but there is a maryada of the relationship. There is that has to, that respect has to come. And what you said, it really, now I've lived almost, let's say, half my life, little more than half my life in the US, and about how, about half in India. And one of the things that I really noticed, and I see this happening more in India, but I noticed this very early, is that modernity in the West has really atomized relationship. And this is one of the, almost a quarter, 20% of the US, for instance, is on depression medication
Yeah.
or some kind of psychiatric medication, right? It's because there is so much isolation. There is so much isolation, and there is only one relationship, which is the sexual relationship
Yeah.
that kind of, you kind of go in and come out of, but all of the other relationships get atomized so much. And this leads to depression. It leads to people not being able to feel that there is support for them. There's the whole social network of support,
Yeah.
and this has been the strength of Indian culture. The strength of
This
Indian
was a
culture.
strength of Western culture as well. They've
Yes,
forgotten it. And
yes,
in this, that's why you should have balance. You can either have depression medicines for 3 weeks, or you can get a hug from your sister. Trust me, if the
right,
hug from your sister will last a lot longer, you won't need those
absolutely,
depression medicines.
absolutely,
Feel
absolutely.
those bonds. There's a
Yes,
value to those bonds. That's what makes
absolutely,
us us.
absolutely, absolutely. So wonderful, absolutely great talking to both of you again. The book is Dharma, and it brings us back to who we are. In fact, there's this whole chapter on Swadharma that I wanted to talk about. It's one of my favorite topics, but I think we'll have to have a continuing dialogue, maybe
Done.
with other things coming up. This like wonderful talking with old friends. It seems like I've never really spoken to you, both of you, at length, but it felt like that. Uh, so I hope we can continue this dialogue and explore many of these things. Thank you so much. And don't forget to click on grpr.in Amish for his whole collection, and then go to the Dharma link for the Dharma book. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaskar.